Hello all YouTubers, I'm the Weather Dude. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you all for tuning back into this weather presentation for May 8th, 2020. Before I get on with today's video, however, I would ask that you please do subscribe if you are not already. It really does help support my channel. And please also, and this applies to every single one of you, please watch the whole video. You'd be surprised how much it really does help me grow my channel. So please consider subscribing and watching the whole video. Thank you. Now let's get on with today's video. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about the tropical disturbance that has a chance of forming a little bit, but regardless of development, this storm will be hitting Florida with a lot of rainfall and a little punch of wind as well. Alright, so before we get into all the modeling and predictions, let's look at the drought monitor. Okay, and you can see for much of the southeast here, at least towards the coastline of Alabama, the parts of the Florida Panhandle, and much of the Florida Peninsula is in at least a D1 or moderate drought. Okay, even some parts in a D2, which is a severe drought, which is more refined towards southwestern Florida, so more like Naples, around that region, Sanibel Island, down towards even just near Miami. All right, but either way, much of the Florida Peninsula as well as the Panhandle, the only place that really is in the clear, so to speak, in that white zone is kind of like Tampa and Jacksonville. But other than that, much of Florida is in a drought currently. All right, let's look at the cyclonic 850 millibar vorticities right now. And you can see here's the energy from the front that's going to be dropping south towards the Gulf of Mexico. All right, and we do even have a piece of energy over here towards the east that will be pushing in today, bringing some rain, and eventually potentially becoming our next bombogenesis, bomb cyclone. If you did not watch that video already, located on the top right corner of your screen. All right, it could bring some snow to the northeast as well, so definitely interesting. But this piece is where we're going to be focusing on dropping into the Gulf of Mexico, combined with a little energy over here, and it's going to make for our tropical disturbance. It's going to bring a lot of rain to Florida. Now, thankfully, this won't become much of a tropical entity for two reasons. One is the dry air. Currently, we have a lot of dry air. Saharan air layer that's currently over the Gulf of Mexico, so it's going to kind of reduce the moisture a little bit, but there's still going to be a lot of rain to come out of this. All right, because the Gulf of Mexico is very warm in nature, right? The water is very warm, and it's going to become a very hot and soupy atmosphere. All right, let's look at the GFS model here, kind of look at the simulated radar. So again, here's your tropical disturbance coming right out of the Mexico and Texas border, right there. And that's going to be it. Okay, probably there's no chance so far that we could see a tropical depression or a storm. Okay, also because there's too much wind shear. That's another reason as well. Okay, well over 50, 60 knots of shear, which is way too much. All right, but it's only May. It's still early yet, not like it's hurricane season. So don't expect too much yet, but we will get into a more active hurricane season. And also my latest 5th hurricane season video is located on the top right of your screen, and stay tuned for the 6th one as well. But the tropical disturbance here over the western Gulf of Mexico, and you can see some pretty heavy rainfall over the central Gulf, right near the center. So that's another reason why it's kind of disorganized due to that wind shear. So usually, we would have the heavy rain to the east of the center or the northeast of the center. Well, instead, the heavy rain is actually right on where the center of the storm is. They're like in the exact same spot. It's a little bit disorganized here, but nonetheless, some moderate rainfall, to say the least, will overtake Florida, even parts of the Mexico Panhandle there, the peninsula, and into Cuba. Even western Cuba could get a little bit of rain as well. And then here's your more heavier band of rain. And I think southern Florida is going to get the most rain out of this. But still, central Florida, I think, could get a decent dousing. All right. And here's that band of rain I just moved through southern Florida right there. All right, it's going to continue to move through and out. And I say it actually has a better chance of developing out here than it does in the Gulf of Mexico, because it could gain a little bit more organization, but still too much wind shear. The only reason it has a better chance of developing out here is because I believe there's going to be a little bit less dry air. But still, this looks like a very suppressed chance of development. Let's look at the simulated radar here for the Canadian model, CMC, another global model here. So again, here comes that front breaking off the southern branch of that front, dropping into the Gulf of Mexico. The other part racing off to the northeast with that bombogenesis or potential bombogenesis. All right, and take a look how they really developed this here. A lot of heavy rain. Like I said, regardless, this is going to be a heavy rain event. We're talking about over 3 to 5 inches, possibly more than that. Okay, and a very heavy area of rain, but like I said, that's right where the center of the storm is. So not quite handling the organization here of the storm system, but nonetheless here, CMC models putting a big area of heavy rain moving right through southwest Florida, through southern Florida, and off the Atlantic side. All right, right there. All right, and then eventually you can move into the Bahamas, where some of the modeling indicated a lot of rain for the Bahamas as well. Still recovering after devastating Hurricane Dorian. All right, very sad. But they do actually have a storm system, a low pressure developing once it leaves the Bahamas. So, and the heavy precipitation is on the eastern side. It looks a little bit more developed, I'd say. Okay, we still have a little piece of the front, because sometimes the front can actually drop from the south here, and the storm systems, because you got the winds like this coming behind the front and winds like this out ahead of it, so it can actually form like a spinning motion. All right, and that's why during May sometimes these that's how some of these storms develop. But if it stays attached to that front, it's going to be hard for it to develop because of too much wind shear. But I'd say it looks a little bit more organized by this point. All right, and this is by Monday afternoon. Moving off the coast, still maintaining about 10-12 millibars of pressure. There's a center. It doesn't have an L, but there's a nice little band of rain right on the eastern side. So I'd say the Canadian model indicates possibly development, but then it's going to just fade away completely into its front, and that's it. All right, now let's look at the European model as in our simulated radar here. Let's move this over. I'm going to kind of scroll down as far as I can here because I want to be able to move this. All right, so there's your storm developing off to the south here. Okay, it's on the western side of the Gulf of Mexico, right there. We have some yellows and oranges, so some decently heavy precipitation is possible. Some heavy rainfall. All right, and then look at the European. Okay, they kind of have like a strung out area of moisture. Like I said, with that wind shear coming in, it's going to help to kind of like string out the moisture, make it more elongated. But still, I mean, that means that potentially if the moisture kept moving in a west-east motion like that, it could last longer. But looks like they won't completely hold like that. All right, we still have some heavy rainfall moving through southern Florida. Now, I know what you're thinking in Florida. Yes, we want the rain. We need the rain. Yes, you do, but even when it's dry like this, it's never too good to have too much rain at one time. And that's really interesting. Like an H and L right next to each other in California, in the Sierra there. It's very interesting. Pretty cool. Anyway, then the storm, again, look at the European model here. Kind of develops it a little bit more. All right, look at this. 1,008 millibars of pressure. That's at least a tropical depression status here. That could even be tropical storm. All right, and then there it is. 1,008 millibars of pressure, and that band of rain moves out of southern Florida. Let me just see the surface winds, because that is very interesting. Let's see if they kind of develop this into a tropical storm. So we look at the winds here, 1,008 millibars of pressure, and it looks like, yeah, they do actually. All you need is 34 knots for a tropical storm, and they put it at 39 knots, which is like about over 45 miles an hour. But like I said, though, look how tiny that area of wind is. I mean, I could barely point it out. It's right where that low center is. So it's going to be fairly disorganized. Could it be a subtropical storm? Possibly. But the European was always kind of developing the storm once it left the Bahamas. And again, some more wind, and then still a tropical storm. All right, I did find winds of 34 knots right there. All right, so still 10 millibars of pressure, but that's right on the border between a tropical storm and a tropical depression. And then it kind of connects with that front again, and it's out of here. All right, let's look at the cyclonic vortices here. Vortices. I just don't know. I just can't decide which one to say sometimes. And here's the GFS model again. Not looking too, hyperactive while it's in the Gulf of Mexico, but again, it's still going to pack a heavy punch with some heavy rainfall amounts. All right, depending on where you are in Florida, particularly the southern and southern central part of the state. But still, there it is. It's not a perfectly circular area of moisture. All right, but I think it does have a chance to rotate a little bit once it leaves Florida and the Bahamas. All right, let's look at the GEM model to kind of compare the vortices. All right, and look at this. If you actually play the animation here, you can kind of see how it rotates to the left a little bit. So it does kind of do a little bit more rotation. I do see more reds. All right, so indicating closer to maybe 30, 35. All right, so some slightly higher vortice values. All right, and still probably a worse storm there for Florida as they are making it, potentially some stronger winds with these higher energy values. And then Again, look at this. There's your center, your storm system right there. But again, it's an elongated area it's an elongated band of energy. So not looking too circular, but here you go. Right here, we do have a chance around 96 hours out. So again, this is about Monday night on the 11th of May. Let's actually look at the surface wind and see if they kind of, yeah, see, they don't even make it probably a tropical depression at best. They don't put any greens on there, which would mean tropical storm force winds. But something we're definitely going to have to keep our eyes on. But regardless of development, there will be heavy rain for central and southern Florida especially. All right. European model, here's your cyclonic vorticities. All right. And again, if we look down, some high values actually moving into Florida, some over the Gulf of Mexico. But again, it's very disorganized. But still, we could have a potent storm system. And again, here it is entering the Bahamas. All right, and this is where the European does sort of start to develop it a little bit more right there. Okay, even if it does develop, it's going to be a very, very small storm system. Maybe only a couple dozen miles, like edge to edge of the storm system. Like if you went horizontally, it might only be a couple dozen miles or a few dozen. All right, but we'll have to see. Some of these storms can vary in size. All right, let's look at the wind shear now. This is one of the reasons why this storm will most likely not develop. All right, and you can see sometimes when these big hurricanes, I mean, not in this case, but sometimes these big hurricanes can actually grow. They can grow so large that they can build a little wall around themselves to kind of block out the wind. It can like block out the wind shear and the dry air. In this case, not so much. Okay, it's a very small system, so it's gonna be more prone to those wind shear, it's gonna be more prone to higher wind shear and more dry air. All right, but then it starts to grow a little bit and maybe kind of starts to build a wall around itself. Okay, because if it was just a low, like right here, that means the wind shear is going right through it. Okay, but you can see how it's kind of starting to build a wall around itself a little bit. All right, that's something we'll be watching. But look at this. See, I was just talking about this. Here's the low pressure, and we still have huge amounts of wind shear cutting right across it, at least 40 to 50 knots. Okay, if you want wind shear, the most amount of knots you can have is probably 20 or 25. Once you get above that, it's going to get pretty hard to develop the storm. All right, and then it races off towards the north and east. All right. GEM model, okay? Here's the GEM model, wind shear. Like I said, once it gets towards Florida, could it start to build a wall around itself? Okay, no, because all the wind shear, the less amounts of wind shear, quote unquote, is more towards the Caribbean. We still have a lot of wind shear cutting across the Gulf of Mexico into the Atlantic. All right, and there it is. Again, look at the low pressure right here. All right, it's still lots of wind shear, that dark red, 50 knots plus, cutting right across it. And that's going to help to really disorganize it. But nonetheless, we're still going to have a lot of moisture with this storm system. All right. This is the European model, kind of like their wind shear values as well. All right. Let's move on here. Again, we got wind shear values 200 millibars, about 90 knots. All right. Now, granted, this is 200 millibars. The other one we looked at was everywhere from 200 millibars to 850, which is towards 5,000 feet. So this is a little bit higher in the atmosphere. But still, we still have a lot of wind shear across the Gulf of Mexico, cutting across Florida and into the western Atlantic Ocean on the eastern coast of Florida. Now, for the total rainfall, our GFS model puts about 2 to 4 inches though, but it's right on the southern tip of Florida, like right near Miami Beach, Fort Lauderdale possibly. And the half-inch or greater values are still well to the south of Florida. So northern Florida may only get, quarter of an inch up to a half an inch. But again, this could still play out. We still have about 3 to 5 days before this system moves through, 3 to 4 days or so. GEM model, it takes the blues a lot farther north, which will be more beneficial because half inch to an inch right in that range, that's like perfect. That's enough to, douse the drought a little bit without causing too many flooding problems. All right, but still, southern Florida here, cutting right across about 2 to 3 inches. All right, and just off the coast of Florida, right between Florida and Cuba, about 6 or 7 inches. But thankfully, that'll be over water. That won't be affecting any land. At least that's what would happen if that model were to play out. Look at the Bahamas here with the European model. Possibly over 10 inches on the northeasternmost island on the Bahamas. All right, so that's very interesting because well over 4 inches for the Bahamas, which is represented by the gold color. Florida only has a few speckles of gold. All right, so possibly some spotty 4-inch values, but again, more so 2 to 3.5 inches for southern Florida. And even central Florida might, get about an inch. So it's not bad. It's going to be a good dousing to put a kind of a big dent in that drought. All right, look at these. This dark blue is like your half-inch amount plus, anywhere south of that. All right, so I'd say anywhere Orlando, Tampa, points south towards Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Naples. All right, even Cocoa Beach. All right, right down the Space Coast might even get a little bit of rain as well, maybe a half inch. But in that red color, that's where you could see upwards of 3 to even 7 inches of rainfall. But looks like the 7-inch values will be just between Florida and Cuba. But Key West, you're right in that bullseye actually of 5 to 7 inches of rainfall. So some we're definitely going to have to keep our eyes on for some potential flooding. All right. Okay, this storm does have a chance to develop because of the above average sea surface temperature anomalies that the storm will be moving across. Even once it crosses over the eastern portion of Florida, they still have warmer ocean temperature anomalies to contend with. So if it weren't for the wind shear and the dry air, this thing would definitely have a shot. Okay, all your 80-degree waters are all right here. But like I said, if it wants to develop, it better develop once it reaches the Bahamas, because after that, unless the waters can really warm up within the next couple of days, the ocean temperatures after the Bahamas with the storm system's track are only in like the 20s Celsius. So that'd be about 70s in Fahrenheit. So not quite enough for development. The latest tropical intensity index for right now, much of the Gulf of Mexico is in green, which means highly unfavorable. Okay, actually the most favorable conditions are actually, according to this, are actually in the Caribbean. So that's where we have orange, which represents favorable, and even some red, which means highly favorable. So red is actually good in this case. But again, the Gulf of Mexico, let's make this a little bit bigger. Gulf of Mexico is still well above average. The whole Gulf of Mexico in total is about 1.1 degrees Celsius above average. So again, just over the whole Gulf of Mexico is about 2 degrees Celsius above average. All right, and lastly, to look at the kind of like the dry air, so to speak, as we wrap this up here. Again, about 4.5, so not bad. So we have some higher values potentially in the Gulf of Mexico right now. If we keep playing this out, the dust should remain the same, maybe get a little bit higher. So again, potentially some more of that dry air coming through. So that is it for today's video. Thank you guys for watching. I'm the Weather Dude, signing off. Till next time. Catch you guys in the next video.